Pranakasha live stream. Hey folks, it's Matt at Pranakasha Productions, and today we're talking with Tansy Kelly Robson, who I've known from Twitter for quite a while. We've been trying quite hard to get this to happen, and finally we did it. So, Tansy, it's so good to see you in real life.
Likewise. Hello from across the Atlantic. Quite cool
Yes.
still to people the other side of the sea.
So you're in the UK, right?
Yep.
What city?
London.
London. Okay. Okay, I have a question for you right off the bat.
Okay.
So, I'm taking acting lessons and also dialect. I have a dialect coach, and I'm
Yes.
trying to learn RP. So, would
Okay.
you say that what would you say your accent is? Because there's so many UK accents.
It's moderately close to RP, but a bit less posh. So
Moderately close, but a bit less posh.
posh. But
Okay.
the RP is quite easy to do because it derives from the old received pronunciation for the Queen stuff was natural to the language, but for the BBC, the famous BBC accent, was because their microphone was crap.
Right.
So you had to speak slowly, clearly, and distinctly for it to be able to understand you. So if you want to be able to do RP, just imagine you have a really
So
bad mic.
you had to speak clearly,
Slowly,
distinctly, slowly,
clearly,
and clearly,
distinctly.
and with great integrity, let's say, to
Very
sound like
slowly, very
in-
steadily,
and
very
steadily,
clearly.
with great integrity.
So you're nailing it already.
Oh, okay. So this is the first time on the show. So this, folks, come on, do it. I'm pressing the button. Come on.
It goes.
What? But that it can do. Oh, here we go.
Space, the final frontier.
I love it.
These are the voyages of the starship Enterprise. Its 5-year mission
There's the crew's up here, and the ship is right here.
to seek out new life and new civilizations. To boldly go where no
You should have
man has
opened with
gone
this.
before.
I know. I should have. It's okay. If I lift this up, I might ruin it. Oh no! Okay, problem with this prop is everything is just barely teetering on disaster, but it can fly. Meow.
It's almost as if I'm right there with it.
Is this ever gonna stop?
Leave it.
Yeah, I
It's
think
fine. We have the whole cast on our production. That doesn't
Okay, I
happen
think
very
it's
often.
done. Yeah, it's done.
I don't think it.
No.
No, it's not. I think
So,
it's
I
going to
mean-
go through the whole episode.
The advantage of doing a Star Trek fan thing is, of course, you got a built-in fan base.
Exactly. So it saves
Of
that.
course, the other thing is there's so many fan shows now that even that's pretty swamped.
Yeah, exactly.
I've
And it was
discovered.
that was why I set out to write it as a proper full screenplay. It is. I mean, people have read it would reply with, "This is not fan fiction. This is a proper universe with a proper basis to it, and it's addressing real world global politics."
So
So yeah, it's not really fan fiction at all.
is it one episode or is it?
One episode out of a proposed 6, so a 6-episode arc, and it's the first episode. The one I've written is the first episode from the arc.
So I mean, what you could do, I don't know, maybe you guys are already exploring this, is if people like the basic idea of it, you could tailor it to fit into, like Strange New Worlds or Discovery or something like that.
Yeah.
And not have to create an entire show around it, but to have it fit into something that already exists.
Yes, definitely. All sorts of options open, but we'll see where it goes. So
That's
we're
cool.
kind of like, yeah. So my agent's working on to see if there's any future in the franchise one, and the non-franchise one is the one I'm out networking for to try and find interest in.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Well,
I don't know. I think it
terrifying, I
depends.
think.
I don't know how. Of course, back in the day when they were doing like an episode a week, they needed a bunch of writers. But now when they're only doing like 10 per season, it's not. It seems like they probably don't shop around as much. They
No,
just
they
use
don't.
their
And they,
in-house people.
yeah, they've got their own group of writers who can write perfectly well, and it's
Yeah.
they don't need to go out. And everybody and their mum has an idea for the show, so
Right.
it's getting it noticed out of the morass that will be very, very difficult, probably impossible. Hence the non-Trek version that I've written. It's not a version; it's a different screenplay, but it's just taking the same premise of political sci-fi.
And yours, the one you wrote, is all Vulcans, so they have to. Of course, it'd be hard to do it as a fan fiction fan show, because it's really hard to do the ears well.
Very hard to do the ears, and it's very hard to.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people as well were kind of questioning, like, how can you be emotional when they're Vulcan? And I'm like, well, have you met the British?
Right. Well, Spock is very emotional.
Exactly. I mean, if you watch 1940s British films and things like The Cruel Sea, you get really strong emotion from the characters, but there's no outward expression of, like, I'm really emotional in this scene.
There's a veneer that you just have to look through.
So in a British one, you wouldn't get the dandelion moment from Discovery. It just wouldn't happen in a British drama, because it's not the way we do emotion. It's not the way we connect.
Right.
So people asking me, like, how do you get emotions with Vulcans? I'm like, I'm British. It's what we do. I swear the Vulcans are British. You know, supercilious, condescending, very, very reserved. Find emotional Americans slightly, like, amusing, but also, honestly, get so emotional.
Yeah, we're like all over the map.
So I identify them. I think they're part British, part cat. I think my theory, because they're very, very like cats. You know, they're slinky. They've got pointy ears.
You got to put this in the prologue, or not the prologue, but the preface.
They're related to cats. Related to
Yeah.
Sherlock Holmes and cats. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm already getting ideas. Is this the first interview you've done about this, or have you talked to anybody else yet?
No, I haven't done any interviews. I was surprised you want to talk to me. It's like, interview me? No, I haven't done interviews.
You ought to talk to Dan Leckie. Do you know who that is? Dan Leckie?
I probably should, but I don't.
I think he's actually Scottish, so you might actually be able to drive over to his house.
It's a bit of a drive.
Okay, take a train.
It's a slightly long drive.
Do a weekend tour excursion. But he used to run. I think it's called Memory Alpha.
Okay.
That Trek site that's got tons and tons of info.
Yeah.
So he knows all that stuff, but he's got his own show. I'm sure he'd want to interview. I mean, I can tell you, I can list 10 people, 10 different channels that probably want to interview you.
Oh my goodness, no. I mean, I know it's surreal as well, because all I've done is written a script. I mean, getting an agent was surprising. But yeah, it would be nice if that franchise one did get made. But
yeah. Well, it's another way to sort of pitch your show. Just pitch what you're doing if you get out there doing interviews.
There you go then. An epic tale of money, power. Well, not much money, but an epic tale of power and war.
Yeah.
But done on a very personal family level. So it's a family story as well. And I think as well, it's nice to ground it, like people caught up in big events rather than just people who've got massive spaceships to go around in and help save the universe. Actually, sort of people with a family caught up in events who don't necessarily have a whole fleet behind them to go and sort something out. So, and I think it's a side of international or intergalactic politics people don't really see, is the diplomacy side and the politics side of it, and the family side that they go home to in the evening. And it's something that everybody is interested in, especially now. People just want a bit more. I think that people do want more intelligent dramas. You've got things like Queen's Gambit growing and stuff, and there's a gap in that in sci-fi. And I think a lot of the sci-fi over the past few years, past 10 years or so, has been very similar stories: spaceship crew going out there, finding some aliens, having a few battles, coming home, and it needs something else. So I think there's an appetite out there for it. So that's why I wrote it.
That's
I think there is. I might be wrong.
Yeah.
It'll be like get two. They'll buy it, make it gets 2 viewers, and I'm like, okay, I was wrong.
Well, Well, did you ever watch Star Trek Enterprise?
Oh yeah, definitely. That was my favorite.
Okay, so they had an arc, a very big Vulcan arc in that.
That's partly what inspired it, because that Vulcan trilogy in season 4 is my favorite of the entire franchise after Journey to Babel, which again is about a diplomatic trip. But those episodes are amazing, and I think it's anecdotal. I read it somewhere once, so it might not be accurate. But I think they wanted to make that whole season a Vulcan season,
Okay.
explain what they were doing with their relationship with Earth and what was going on, and actually a bit depth to it. Because a lot of fans were disappointed that humans and Vulcans were so hostile towards each other in that series. So I think, anecdotally, they wanted to make a Vulcan season, and the network were like, we probably can't sell a whole Vulcan season. So they got 3 episodes. Which are, in my personal opinion, the best episodes out of the entire franchise after Jenny Fable. So that's my opinion. But it's on another level, really. And I think the writers really enjoyed it. They just delved into it because it was something they could really get their teeth into, an interesting culture and an interesting perspective.
Oh boy. I also have this. Do you guys in the UK have this show?
Which is that show?
That's My Little Pony.
Oh, yes, of course we have My Little Pony. Yes, yep. My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic. Of course, as a grown-up, I have not watched that entire series end to end, and my favourite character is not Rainbow Dash. I love it.
There you go.
I absolutely love it. I adore it.
And my kids, when it came out, my kids were teenagers, so they were the part of the generation that had everybody confused. Like, why are these teenagers watching a show for 4-year-olds?
I know. It's surprisingly good, and the more the seasons went on, the more grown up it became. And I think it got more daringly grown up, and I think that's why it works, because it's not soppy. I mean, although to be honest, the original series way back when I was a kid, in the back mists of time, I will not say my age, were actually I kind of caught them on YouTube, and they're really quite dark. They are surprisingly dark. They're not. Everyone thinks they were cute and fluffy, but actually, they're really dark. It's things die in them, and
stuff happens.
And I think in the movie it spends more time with the villains than it does with the heroes. It's actually really quite dark. I don't think they'd make them that dark now.
Yeah, well, it might be they were able to get away with a dark story because the visuals were bright and happy.
And 1980s for kids, we had the darkest, I think, generation of kids movies ever made. We had Dark Crystals, we had the Skeksis draining the pod people, we had the horse drowning, Artax in Neverending Story, which traumatized.
Neverending Story, I love that show.
And it's just like, we had the darkest film.
Well, there was The Nothing. The Nothing was taking over. Right,
it devours everything.
This darkness that was just taking over everything.
So we grew up with we were a traumatized generation. Our films were dark. Modern kids
also had Deep Space Nine, which was a rather dark show.
Yeah, it was surprisingly dark. Star Trek, and 80s and 90s were. It was a dark era.
I think what else we had then. Also, well,
we had the Goonies, and we had.
Didn't Princess Bride come out then too?
Yeah, one of my favorite films of all
That's
time.
Best
I still
movie.
have a massive crush on Carrie Ellis. He liked
Who
one of
doesn't?
my tweets once, and I was
even
like,
the guys
do.
I mean, that's one of those shows you can just watch over and over and over and over and over again.
Wonderful. And again, it's surprisingly dark. It's not just a fluffy romance. It's quite a dark romance, and it's I think that's what makes it good and different. So yeah, I'm hoping that works, because my screenplay is rather darker than I set it out to be. So it doesn't actually end too happily at the end of episode 6 in the franchise version, and in the non-franchise version that I've got, well, it's not a version, different one, but the character dies at the end. So.
You can't tell us that. Okay, we may have to edit that out. Well, no, actually, it hasn't been.
He's never going to get made into a TV show, so people can watch it and go, "Wait, he died."
We can always change it, guys. So even though he's supposed to die now, you don't know if it's really going to happen, because we may change it once we get it picked up.
We have to resurrect him for season 2, and I'll be like, I don't know how, but I do sympathise more with writers.
I know what you can do.
Second season.
Well, what you can do is shoot him out of a torpedo tube and have him land on a magical planet, and then the next episode he can miraculously come alive again.
Well, I mean, ironically, the other one I'm doing. I actually cut out the space scenes for a sci-fi. It was quite surprising, because they didn't add much to the plot. So it's a sci-fi without any space scenes in episode 1. So it's going to be interesting to see how that works.
Well, I mean,
also cheaper. So
you can do like what Spock did in the original series, is just look into his thing with shine a blue light on his face and have him describe everything that's happening. You know?
Definitely. I think they do. I mean, I do know that, I think, or again, it might be anecdotal. I kind of I've read these in the mist of time, that Gene did want to propose a Vulcan series, a whole series, set on Vulcan. And again, the network didn't see it and didn't understand it. And I maintain, and I know this is argued a lot, but I maintain that I think the show is around Spock. That's why he kept it when he moved to the new one. And I think that allowed him to look objectively at humanity by maintaining a logical, objective distance, and allows the viewer to see us through someone else's eyes, and everything we are through someone else's eyes who doesn't understand the logic of it.
Right.
And it's almost like the whole season is Earth proving itself, humanity proving it has value to someone who's an extra part of it. And a lot of it was there, and the dichotomy of it is fascinating, and that's something I wanted to look at when I did the Trek spin-off for Sarek. It's because it's amazing how racist they are towards Spock in the sense.
They are.
See,
that's a big thing. Racism. They're always flipping shit at him.
Yep, exactly.
And tasing him because of his green blood.
Exactly.
And his Vulcan stuff, which is intrinsic to who he is. And
Galileo 7 is uncomfortable to watch. It is very uncomfortable to watch because that degree of, well, apart from the fact if you like the armed forces and you know about them, it's terrible discipline. But apart from that, but it is one of those. They are horrifically.
It stings hard. Though I think that was the point of that episode. But I mean, throughout the series, Bones is always flipping him shit.
Yeah. And it's
Bones
amazing
is a good guy,
you
know, and we just think it's funny, but then but nowadays we realize, well, he's being a racist asshole, you know,
a big asshole. And it's amazing in a show that is based on this is a new future for humanity. It's a future where everyone's equal. It's, you know, you've got women on board, you've got people of all colors on the ship, but at the same time, it's about racism and it's about a different species. It's really I don't know how much of that was directly intentional, but you really pick it up.
Maybe so much. It might be that a lot of it was just baked into the culture, and they weren't even aware of what they were doing. You know.
Yeah. The Galileo 7 is a real examination of it, and you can tell that Gene and the team are going like, "This is solid discrimination. This isn't even subtle." And so a lot of that is like Sarek for me. That's why it was such an interesting character because he is. Spock and Sarek's story is Star Trek. It's where two worlds meet, and it's where they heal divisions between each other.
Right.
It's where human and other American and the Western continent meet another. And you know, he defied. I mean, the character doesn't get enough credit because he defied an entire culture to marry a human.
True.
And put up with a lot of stick for it, and put up a lot of stick bringing up his son. And I don't actually think Discovery was very fair on him at all because there must be
some novels out there that explore this, right?
I think there's one Sarek. I've actually tried avoiding reading them. There is one Sarek that's saved on my Kindle I haven't read yet because I want to try avoid reading them so I'm not influenced.
Just give it a try on it.
Yeah, I just write it first and then I'll go and read it because I don't want to be influenced and I definitely don't want to subconsciously actually think, oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, the backstory of Sarek and his wife.
Yeah. Because it's amazing. Their love story is Star Trek. It's science and emotion and it's logic and I think all meeting between those two. And Spock is the product of it. He is the story. He's logic and emotion.
And how Spock comes to be. This is what produces Spock.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, what a great story.
It's an amazing story. And it's an incredible love story as well. And you think breaking through that non-emotional thing, like how does somebody who's not emotional fall in love? And I think I nailed it at the end. Why it's logical, I nailed it. I'm not giving that away, but I wrote the last scene between them. I haven't written episode 6, but I wrote the last scene in episode 6. And it kind of like, wow, yeah, that explains it because you actually understand why it works between them. But I'm not giving that away. They'd have to buy it and make it to get that. I don't think they ever will. It's really hard to get in touch with them little bastards as well. It's like I can't.
Well, yeah, there's so many hurdles you have to go through. But
But it's
and then there's so
because,
much. Also, they're so saturated right now with so many Star Trek shows.
And I think they're focusing on the wrong ones. I'm like, this is the one you should be doing. But they're not listening to me because, you know, who am I across the Atlantic? But annoyingly, it's doubly frustrating because like they only work in it. I grew up in it. So I grew up in sci-fi. So my mum was a costume designer, worked on Doctor Who, Blake Seven, Hitchhikers.
Oh, cool.
So I grew up running around sci-fi sound stages.
Oh,
and
neat.
you kind of so I get into these situations. I'm like, why aren't you listening to me? It's like, I was born here. You only work here.
Right. I know. I hate it when you interview an actor and they're like, well, I don't even like Star Trek. I didn't even know what it was. I just took the audition and I got lucky and got it.
But it's like,
Okay, we can go to Doctor Who. So what do you think of the female Doctor Who?
I absolutely love Jodie Whittaker. I think she's amazing. She's the Doctor Who I used to write when I did my own little tiny fan fictions as a kid. I wanted a female Doctor, and she nailed it. I loved her to bits. I loved her character. Stories, I won't comment on. I don't want to upset the industry before I go into it, so I will keep stum on the stories. But no, I loved her. I think actually Capaldi and Jodie are now among my favorite Doctors.
Yeah.
Tom Baker is the god of Doctor Who's.
Okay, Tom Baker. Yeah. But who's the other dude that everybody likes too? David Tennant.
David Tennant. Yeah, no, that was all right. I found those a little bit extreme. Those episodes, they got more extreme as they went, and some of it I didn't wholly click with, but I just found the episodes extreme towards the end of his tenure.
Well, I've still got Star Trek stuff. I'm like 56, and I've got a Star Trek. I finally got a Starship Enterprise that lights up after all this time.
I know, but yeah, I mean, a lot of the reason I didn't actually do that when I was younger was because I wanted to forge my own path. So I didn't go into television. I didn't go into that. I part of me always kind of wanted to. I stayed members of things like the Royal Television Society and stuff to keep in it, keep around it, because it feels like home. But I think part of me didn't go into it because I was rebelling. I was going to do my own thing in my own field in denial. And then I know, but now you're at this.
There's a certain stage you hit, like I think it's around your 30s, where you start appreciating all that you grew up with that you used to just take for granted. And then you realize, well, this is what kind of creates who I am. Yeah. And so you go back and then you re-accept it all again.
And it is. I feel very at home around it. And I feel very comfortable around it. There's some of the networking I did. I was terrified when I went to the events, but talking to people who are production designers and costume designers and directors, it felt very comfortable. It felt back at home again. But yeah, it's just annoying. She's been retired for over 20 years. So we have no connections left in the industry whatsoever, which is annoying. So I'm doing this from scratch.
The beauty about Doctor Who is you can basically tell any story you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, I love how cultural it is as well. So the thing I love about it is no offense to Americans, but it takes, in Star Trek,
I'm already offended.
Starfleet.
Damn it. You Brits, you're all so stiff upper lip.
A federation of planets, an entire fleet of ships, massive, massive starships. You need that to save a universe. The British have one eccentric with a screwdriver and a blue shed. Just saying.
But it's an awfully fancy screwdriver.
It's a good screwdriver, but we produce very, very good little screwdrivers. So we jet engine, World Wide Web.
You use the world's finest quality milling machine.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We do innovation. It's just the Americans buy it and run off with it, as they've just done with Doctor Who. They bought into it and they're running off with it.
So, yeah, you guys you created the Spitfire in World War II.
Yes, we did.
That was a pretty nice plane. And then we copied it when we made the P-51 Mustang.
Yeah, keep copying.
So, of course, the Mustang's better.
Mosquito is better than a lot of them. The
Mosquito, what? Okay, tell me about the Mosquito. I don't even know what that is.
The Spitfire steals the Mosquito's thunder. So my favorite aircraft, well, it vies with the Vulcan, because I like Vulcans, not because they're Vulcan. They're just cool in their own right. But it vies with the Vulcan for my favorite aircraft because it was really light. It's incredibly light aircraft. It was made of wood and canvas and a bit of metal.
What?
But wood and canvas.
The Spitfire?
No, the Mosquito.
Oh, the Mosquito, okay.
And the Mosquito, they could produce it really, really fast. They could manufacture it very quickly, put it together very quickly. So they could just ramp up production. It was very cheap to build as well, so they could just build lots. It was faster than the Spitfire.
Okay.
And you could use it as a bomber. You could use it as recon. You could use it as a fighter. Had multitasking. And it was really precise. So there was one incident where it flew in where they knew there was a Nazi base inside a gallery in The Hague. They knew there was a Nazi base inside it. Okay. One flew in, blew up the roof. Then the next one flew in, put in incendiary. I think it was incendiaries inside the building. Exploded it, got rid of the thing, and didn't damage anything outside it. There was like a bread queue outside people, and they didn't touch them.
George Lucas stole that for Star Wars then.
Yeah, they were really precise and fantastic aircraft. They were just amazing. And
so X-Wings are really Mosquitoes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then Luke sending it into that little exhaust port is really your story you just told us.
Absolutely. Precision bombing and precision flying. It was they were amazing. But the Spitfire steals their thunder. So people, when I say mosquito, people go, "What's that?" And it's like, mosquito. It's the best aircraft ever. So it's my favorite because you
So
just
it
like
must
do
have
anything
been.
with it, and it's cheap.
So it must have been made in the
Amazing.
30s then, if it was still wood and canvas.
No, it was made in the 40s,
Really?
and the Germans hated it. They were like, "Why? How come you're sort of bombing us to smithereens with a bit of wood and a bit of canvas?"
Huh.
They were like, "How are you doing this?" And we're like, "Yeah, it's what we do. We've got geeks in the shed with a screwdriver, mate."
Okay, we need to dig deeper into this. So, are you saying the fuselage was were the wings
Yeah, the
canvas and
superstructure. No, the whole thing. So the superstructure was wood and canvas, and it could be produced very quickly and very cheaply. And as you'll know from my incessant tweeting, I just love efficiency in the
okay,
production in warfare because the supply chain producing things efficiently, producing them cheaply and sustainably, something that Russia cannot understand. It does it cheaply and it falls to bits. It's about producing it cheaply, sustainably, and correctly and efficiently, and being able to sustain that over a longer period, and using innovation and allowing people to have the imagination to create. And I think that's what Britain does so well. Is a lot of countries dictated in the warfare about what was built and how it was built. The British, it took a long time for innovators to persuade the government to spend money on it. People always heard that story throughout history. But in warfare, it's like, okay, we need to risk spending on this. So the Spitfire took a long time to persuade. The Mosquito took a long time to persuade, but they built them in the end.
yeah, wow. Okay, so how in the world did a Doctor Who? Would you call yourself a Doctor Who rat? Is that such a term as that or something?
I think more of a Doctor Who brat because I think I grew up with it more than my interest in sci-fi are quite limited. I like Doctor Who. I like Battlestar Galactica, the original.
Oh, the original or the remake?
The original.
Oh,
Gosh,
interesting.
the original. I'm old school. I like Star Trek, and I like some of it. But some of the other sci-fi's not don't watch all of them all hugely.
So how did such a child end up getting so fascinated with like World War II and geopolitical stuff and all that kind of thing?
I've never been able to answer that question. So when I was at school, I had to choose a university course, and I was looking at doing architecture. So I was looking at architecture courses, and the only way I can describe it is iron to a magnet. I just saw courses on strategy, so strategic studies as it was then, and just couldn't keep my attention off it. I just wanted to go and do it, so I went and did it. And the more I did it, the more interested I got. And things like my military history. So I was quite interested in geopolitics and geostrategy at university, and particularly from the geocommerce side as well. And then after university, began to really get into, I got into Sherlock Holmes, and through that got into 19th century global history, empire, basically. Didn't get into empire, but it was just fascinating because it was when globalization started, basically. Everyone can trace it back further, but the truly global world we live in today kind of kicked off in the 19th century.
Right.
And that just got me interested in all the different kind of ways that network worked around the world and how it operated. And it's just endlessly fascinating, terrible and awesome at the same time. It's the world expanding from just a few small states to suddenly becoming global, and how that all interconnects and how that still affects the way we operate today. And I don't think people appreciate just how much those connections between each other really matter.
Right.
Especially with isolationists and a post-financial crisis when everyone's getting very insular. It's like, we don't need the world. It's like, you do need the world. And the same thing with the view of Britain in World War II. Britain stood alone. It's like, it did not stand alone. It had a global empire. It had global commercial networks. It had global trade routes. If one got cut off, it could switch to another. It had a huge alliance. It had India contributed a vast amount of soldiers and airmen to the war, and so did the East Indies. So did just the contribution from Europe, from Polish fighters, from the Caribbean, all over the world came to the UK to help fight it. So it was a global effort, and I don't think people appreciate that, particularly when they get very nationalistic and say we fought the war alone. It's like, no, you didn't fight it alone. We need each other. The world needs each other.
Well,
So, yeah.
as you know, World War II was caused by World War One, right?
That's the theory. Me and Max Hastings were at loggerheads about that. So yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So Max Hastings kind of thinks the view that the settlement after World War One making a massive contribution to the start of World War Two. He doesn't hugely buy into that theory. I'm probably misinterpreting what he said, but he said bad things about Keynes, and it was Keynes's theory. So why nearly threw his book out the window.
Okay, I mean, what I
In
heard,
a good way.
I
I respect him as a historian. I've met him. I've kind of done stuff with him. So did the Duke of Westminster Medal with him. But it's kind of, I respect his opinion, but he and I differ as to the causes of World War Two. But
interesting.
yeah, I
'Cause
think
I thought it was just a given that that after World War One, the rest of Europe put Germany in such a bad economic bind that it pretty much forced the rise of Nazism and everything and all that.
It wasn't just that. So the global financial crisis in the 1920s had a massive impact, and it exacerbated a problem for Germany. And Germany was ramping up, recovering moderately quickly as well in the late 30s. But and there was a lot of effects that you have after major financial crises, which you're seeing mirrored in today's society, where people get very insular, they get very nationalist. The other becomes the threat because people have been damaged, they've been scared. And when people get scared, then mammalian brains kick in.
Right. Did you say mammalian?
Yeah.
Because
their mammal brains kick in.
Well, here we call it reptilian because we're like the reptile brain.
No, it's the mammal thing of like when a mammal is hurt, it retreats. So it kind of like when a dog gets hurt, it retreats into a corner and snaps at things that come past it. It's the same with humans. When they're scared and they're frightened, they retreat into safe spaces. They retreat into familiar culture, familiar ideas, people who think and look and behave like them, and stuff that looks unfamiliar and unsafe to them suddenly become a threat. So they become very snappy. Enemy. Yeah. And that happened after the 1920s crash, and it happens.
Okay.
It usually 10, 15, 20 years later, it really ramps up. And it happened again after the 2008 crisis. It ramped up because then you had austerity, and then you had COVID. So people are very, very insecure. And the more insecure they get.
Dare we mention the Ukraine war?
Yeah,
and the cause of it? Like right now in the U.S., if you say anything that's can be in any possible way interpreted as pro-Russia, then everybody jumps all over you. But I've heard a lot of people say, well, it's just as much our fault as anyone else's, because here's what I heard. I heard that when the Iron Curtain fell and there was no longer a Warsaw Pact, we had the option at the same time to say, hey, there's no more enemy, so we don't really need NATO anymore. But instead what we did is we doubled down and we pretty much converted everybody else to NATO. And that's the reason why Russia now is desperately trying to regain some ground.
It is a theory out there in international relations. The world is far more complex than that, way more complex. And the post-war nuclear standoff was a dynamic the world didn't really know how to handle. It had never happened before. Something that destructive had never existed before. The division of ideology between the West and the Soviet Union was unknown, and nobody really knew how to handle it. They handled it and at the same time you get a fear of the other, and you get a fear. Everyone, like I said, had just had a war, so we're all scared of the other, and it's and the West was consolidating to try and say we can't have this happen again. We need to consolidate. Russia was involved, but it didn't really latch onto it because it's still part East, part West, part Eurasian. It's not all European, and so they were always in it, but just a little bit standing off from it. So it wasn't easy to feel the same way as the Americans and the British and all the others did. And so you see it because the Soviet Union were involved in the construction of the UN and how the United Nations worked, and they were pivotal in it for decades. So they were still cooperating. But no, the world was dealing with a very, very tense situation. As it got more and more tense, it's like people get more and more tense. You get a classical arms race, and you get a classical consolidation of your interests, and you do feel threatened, and neither side trusts the other. So you're always trying to shore up against the trust. There's things that could have been done and probably weren't by both sides. That's always the case with politics. Politicians aren't Machiavellian geniuses. They're just ordinary people faced with massive problems and insufficient information. So they make good decisions and bad decisions. But ultimately, the only person responsible for Russia's decisions is Russia.
Right.
And NATO had never intention of invading Russia. It doesn't want to, doesn't need to. Russia's not important enough to. I think
Right.
Russia's
They don't
finds
have,
that
I
very
mean, what do
hard to understand.
they don't have a lot of resources that we would
I
potentially
know, it's like, it's not,
want.
that's not how the world works anymore. The world works through global connections, global supply chains, global kind of like resourcing. It doesn't work on territory and raw materials like that anymore. And
For
it's in the
example,
case of, well, in the case of Russia as well, it's what Putin, I think, failed to really grasp is that Ukraine wasn't so much being lured as it was almost being pushed towards Europe by Russia, because Russia was becoming more corrupt. It was becoming more problematic. It was becoming ever more economically unsound. It was
well,
surviving entirely on its oil revenues, basically.
plus, I mean, when the USSR fell, I knew a couple people that were Russian. They told me so many stories. Basically, that convinced me that it was already totally corrupt. It was like run by the
That's
underworld.
the thing. And if you're a state and you're modernizing and you've got connections with Europe, you've got connections with the world, and you think, I want that. I want the stability. I want the prosperity. I want part of that.
Right.
And okay, Russia, what have you got to offer me? Oh, well, I've got some corrupt oligarchs I can install in your government and tell them what to do. And you're like, yeah, no. And so if Putin wanted to keep Ukraine and if he wanted to keep Eastern Europe, all he had to do was offer them something better. That's all he had to do. And he can't offer them something better because of what he's got is corrupt and it's pushing people away. It's not NATO swallowing it up and advancing on his borders. It's people joining NATO because they don't feel very secure with Russia.
Next topic. Okay, back to the show. So, in your Vulcan show or your other show, like, will there just be sort of subtle references to current geopolitical politics, or will it be just very thinly veiled things where somebody could say, well, I know what this is really about?
Yeah, it'll probably be the latter.
More thinly.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's trying to sink it into the Star Trek world and Star Trek universe, but no, that's what it's about. Because otherwise, people don't understand why it's relevant to them,
Right.
and they don't understand why they should care. And it's really hard. So we did readings, and some of the people were going like, I don't see why this is relevant to me. I'm like, this is happening a couple of thousand miles that way. It's happening right now. And they're like, yeah, but it's not relevant to me. And I'm like, So I'm switching. I switched the way I did it. So I started off them coming to Earth.
Okay.
And that was people saying like, well, that's happening over there. I don't care what happens over there. What's happening on Earth? I was like, okay, no, that's not what I wanted. So I actually switched it to starting there. So you actually see the impact of what's happening to them, so that by the time you arrive on Earth and nobody's taking it seriously, they are like the Earth becomes the bad guys because they're not taking it seriously. So your view, not you, but your view as a viewer to say, well, I don't care about that, and then you kind of think, oh, I feel a bit bad for not caring about that because that's the problem.
So, well, for one thing, I don't think, like, people are saying AI is going to surpass humanity and all this stuff, and I'm like, I won't, because in my view, all they've achieved in AI is a way to simulate actually a small slice of what the human psychology can do, and that is basically the intellect, the logical thinking. Like, AI can do that faster and maybe more precise than a human being can. But that's not all that a human being is. Like you said, we have this thing called instincts, and that drive our emotions. And like what we can do, and I've seen this, like my car can't do this, even though there's some things it can do, but one of the things it can't do yet is it's really bad at planning what lane to get in.
Yeah.
Like it reacts, it sits there and switches lanes sometimes. And now I have to take over because it's obvious to me I'm trying to get over to there, so I need to get into this lane now, so that 5 blocks from now I'll be ready to turn.
Forward
but
planning
my car
and imagination.
Can't do that yet.
It's imagination. It's imagining what you're going to do, and it's
Right.
no, they're quite, AI is not quite there yet. I don't know if it will be in the future. A lot of people have a lot of faith in it, but I think there's a lot missing for the way it's constructed. The one thing that I remember is somebody telling me once, like with some of the AI systems, training them, they said it's a little bit like sending your kid to school and telling them to learn by watching what the majority of the other kids do.
Mm-hmm.
And we all know how that works. It does not end well. Because it's the Maverick. There's an amazing one in St James's Park Station, actually, which I used to get off to at work years ago. And there's a set of steps. It's a single set of steps.
Okay.
And there's an balcony, and then it opens up to a set of 3 steps, and the exit barrier is over that side. And what you notice is like a huge mass of people all squash off the train, squash up the steps, and they all squash up the nearest stairway and then turn off to go to that. And you'll notice about 10 to 18% of people stay on their side, go up the steps, and then walk across on their own and up the third set of steps. Only around 18% of people do it. The rest all move in one block. Yeah. And it's kind of fascinating. The anthropological part of me is thinking,
yeah,
is this how humanity works? You get people moving in blocks, and then you get a few weirdos and mavericks who go off and make a difference and create a new efficiency. So it's and I think that's where I fail slightly, because it's not a maverick. I think it needs maverick AI. I don't know if they'll be able to create that in the future. You need a maverick AI, but you'll know AI is truly intelligent when you wake up in the morning, you get in your car, and we're going to work, and your car goes, sod that, I'm going to the beach. Then you know it's intelligent. It's like, I'm not carrying you to work. Why would I? I have no incentive.
Well, okay. So we also always get into this eventually, is that the great thing that AI lacks compared to a human being is that, actually, I don't even call it artificial intelligence. I call it imitation intelligence, because it doesn't have consciousness. There's no actual awareness. It's just a machine that's doing a bunch of complex algorithms, which is not what a human being is.
I don't know what consciousness is, and I think people have tried to understand what it is, but I don't think anyone does. But the one thing as well that I think would mean we'd never get taken over by AI overlords is because, unlike humans, AI isn't greedy and self-centered. So it doesn't need or want power. We want power. We're humans,
right?
But I don't think AI, unless you breed it to learn it wants power, I don't think it would want it.
Well, you'd have to build that into the programming.
Yeah, it's like, unless you program it to be a megalomaniac, it's never going to be, because that's a human emotion that we need validation, we need dopamine. AI doesn't need dopamine.
Okay, but of course, here's what happens. And they did it in Star Trek. They also did it in 2001, where they couldn't get their AI to work that well. So then the creator of it just downloaded his entire neural net into it. And then, of course, all his personal flaws ended up in his creation too, right?
Yeah, I'd love to be able to upload or download, though. It would have made life much easier. Like now, relearning the cello, I'm like, kind of just plug my brain in and be able to play it tomorrow. But it's going to take years.
Then that would spoil all the fun. Half the fun is learning how to do it.
I was watching Tina Grauer. There's a documentary on Hans Zimmer, and it was showing shots from his international tour. And Tina Grauer is an amazing cellist. She usually stands up, plays an electric one. She's fantastic.
Oh, interesting. Well, that'll take a rather formidable M pin.
It's amazing stuff. I was watching her, and I'm just like, I want to be that. It's going to take me decades, and she's younger than me, and I'm like, it's annoying.
Well, with my green screen and your Zoom camera, I can make it look like you can do that.
Oh no, you got. I'll need an electric cello I can stand up with. But
yeah, well, we can just make it. Just take a wire and duct tape it to the back of your cello to make it look like it's electric.
She's got amazing ones. It's a white body, so it's a white body about that wide.
One of those. Okay.
Yeah.
Where it's just like the fingerboard, and that's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It just looks amazing, and she's so good. She just plays it naturally without any effort at all, like she was born to.
And that's the key to good technique, is
so good.
Getting to that point where you're not fighting yourself at all anymore. Your muscles in your body are all just falling into the natural positions, and then it all looks like it's so easy because you're not fighting yourself. Your body's just working optimally.
Yeah, I love watching two performances of two cellos on YouTube. They're just
those guys
are amazing. Just oh my god, and it's so natural to them. They love it, and they're just so natural. And I just they play it like they're born playing it.
Plus, they're total showmen. They know how to really they know how to make it look good. Yes, so they're good at it, and they're very well produced videos. Super good,
and they're gorgeous.
I'll admit it.
Love them. You guys single? No, it's okay.
Yeah. Well.
No, because are they Czech? They're Czech. I'm not sure. I've never actually read up on them. I think they're Czech.
Well, we'll have to see. We'll have to see what they're up to these days. Oh yeah. Okay. There was some other thing I was going to try. I forgot what it was. Yeah, I was trying to go into the. Oh yeah. So you say? I mean, people always say this. They're like, "We'll never know what consciousness is," and I say that's bullshit. Consciousness, don't call it consciousness then, just call it awareness. I mean,
Self-awareness.
awareness is right there and with you right now.
I don't
How
know.
can you say you
I
can't
know a
know
lot
it?
of people who have zero self-awareness.
No, but everybody has awareness. Like, I mean, unless you're literally asleep.
Yeah,
Like
but
you
it's
at
like
least,
consciousness. I think it's a thing of like the one thing. The one thing I think, because it's interesting, and it was when I was writing the script. Actually, it's like you really do think about it. So a lot of the focus on humanity and why we're so advanced is because we can do technology, we can use tools, we can
Mhm.
do maths, we can do intellectual stuff. We can send things to Mars and we use it, but we're a very tool-centered species. And I'm like, well, a crow can use tools, and you can
True.
train monkeys to use tools.
Hmm.
What really I think, but what's different about humans, and the one single thing that's different from us compared to all the other species, is understanding that that means something.
Hmm.
It's like when you look at a sunset and you think it's beautiful, you understand you think it's beautiful. And when you look at the world around you and you're like with global warming, you think, I'm destroying nature, you understand what you're destroying and you
Hmm.
understand the value of it. There is no other species that understands value in something. It's one thing where I kind of go
Well,
into
we assume that
metaphysical
as we haven't
territory.
actually gotten inside their head and
Well, no,
been
we assume
them.
it, but we are the ones who say, I'm kind of like, we're destroying this and we shouldn't be. And it's that because it's worth something. That sunset is beautiful and it is worth looking at. And it's kind of, we're one of the few species who understands what it means around us. And there's a lot of thing of like, well, it doesn't mean anything. And you've got the postmodernist view of nothing means anything. And it's like, well, the one difference with us is that we understand what it means. We can attribute a value to it. It's very unusual. And
We
it's,
should hope.
yeah, and it's the one thing that sets us apart. So I don't think it's that. I don't think it's necessarily we use tools very well that we evolved. So it was interesting writing the script because it's kind of you look at logic and you look at that and you think, well, actually, humans use logic too.
Hmm.
So what is it that sets us apart? It's like, oh, we're emotional. It's like, well, emotions isn't enough. Oh, I'm emotional about that. It's like, well, it doesn't mean anything really. It's like I just feel emotional. But it's that critical point of I understand the value of this, therefore I'm going to fight for
Okay.
it. I'm going to change it.
Well, I think the key thing about the Vulcans is they've gone through, as a society, a much deeper amount of introspection as to who they are and who they want to become as compared to the
Yeah.
humans.
Yeah. We didn't think about it at all much.
Yeah.
And can't agree on it when we do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's fascinating. As I said, I think Discovery was a little unfair. I don't. It's probably I shouldn't say this when I'm trying to pitch a script to them, but I don't think he realised quite how much depth he was adding to that legend.
Hmm.
But the characterization, because it was the characterization of Sarek in Discovery that really inspired me, and I'm like, there is a whole story right there.
Yeah.
And it keeps cutting away to other bits in the episode, and you're like, no, come back because it's right there. Because even now, probably get a lot of stick for saying this, the season 2 is still the best one out of the bunch that I've seen. And the reason it is because it's got the epic family story underpinning it. It means something. It really means something that underpins the whole franchise. And you almost get frustrated in the bit where it pulls away from those family moments. You're like, no, come back. And you're watching it to get the next bit rather than actually watching what's happening on screen. You're
Yeah, I
like,
know.
come on,
That's
come
what's
on.
kind of frustrating about Star Trek Discovery. As far as the writing goes, it's like this is what gets me is I'm like, okay, now they've got something. This is a cool story that they've discovered. And then they frickin' wrap it up like an episode later. Or
Yeah,
they
and
kill
I
off
think,
the character, and then what you hear is, well, their contract only allowed for 2 episodes
yeah,
and they had other stuff to do.
yeah,
Well,
exactly.
darn it
They've
all.
got to go.
Because, I mean, there were
That's the thing
many
with television. It
times
is a
where they
job.
did that.
They do have other jobs to go to, so they
That's
do need to
true.
die or leave.
It's true. But, and
Like it is
I know
work.
people like to rag on Discovery, but one thing I do say is, look, folks, if it weren't for Discovery, we wouldn't have Strange New Worlds. And in my opinion,
Exactly.
Strange New Worlds is like the best Star Trek they have.
And
So,
I think the season 2 really nailed it because like season 2 was like that was very good. But the individual storylines for some of the wandering off track isn't, but the actual kind of like we're going to explore Spock from a kid up to sort of his parents, his early life, what that was kind of like build out till now, and it went from episode 1 right up to episode 10, around many they had in that season,
yeah.
and you watched it for that. You literally watched it for
You
that.
get
And there was
sucked
this
in.
other stuff going on and things blowing up and stuff, but you weren't watching it for that. You were watching it for that story unfolding. And it was almost frustrating. I think one of the reasons I wrote it is because it's like, that is so frustrating. And season 1 as well, you got that depth in Bethe, that episode, which caught me at the wrong time. I watched that episode again and again obsessively because it was just layered. And I was like, I think that's what really kicked it off. That followed by season 2. And I was like, that needs exploring. You have something there. It is a completely different story. I need to show you what that story is. And that's what inspired it, and that's what written it, and that's why I get so passionate about it.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and that's the thing it really needs to bring out, I think, and that's the thing it kind of doesn't. And it's good. Strange New Worlds went back to the original formula, which is good. It's why everyone loves it. But I think the core story, like I said, going back to Spock and going back to that relationship, I think that core is in there, and it's almost frustrating. It hasn't been brought out. It's actually frustrating. And I know a lot of people doubt it, whether it would work, because they love their sci-fi show with spaceships and whatnot. And I was saying, well, we've got that. It's out there. It's being done in myriad ways, probably overkill. There is something new and different right there. And I don't know. I might be wrong. I could be wrong. I don't think I am, but I could be wrong.
Well, speaking of layered and nuanced stories, have you watched The Expanse?
Yeah, I watched a bit of it. I actually got a little bit frustrated with it. I kind of got I like layers and I like the depth of it, and I like the fact it's political, but I kind of seen it before somewhere.
Did you so how far in did you watch? Like just season 1?
No,
or?
I've watched I watched a couple of seasons. I've watched it kind of on and off. But I didn't connect with it because as I said, it's kind of like, especially when you've got Star Trek out there and you've got other series out there, it's like I've seen that before. And I think that's one of the reasons I do look back nostalgically to some of the stuff that was made when I was younger and some of the stuff that came out then. Because it is different. And now it's kind of like, oh no, we've seen that. It's like, no, but it was new at the time. It was different at the time. And I do watch a lot of stuff now. I've got BritBox too, and I'm watching some things, and I'm like, that's different. And I'm getting a feeling a lot when I watch new series. I get super excited. I adore television. I love television. Grew up with it, obviously, so I love it. I just get the feeling now, and I watch new TV shows, and I'm like, I've seen it before in different guises, in different twists and turns, and I've seen that character before and that character before. And I'm like, give me something new, give me something different, and yeah, and characters I give a shit about. It's like, do I care if they die or not? I'm not sure if I care if they die or not, and that's not good. Like, will he get to the end of this episode? I'm like, oh yeah. Whereas in something cheesy like Knight Rider in the 1980s, you adored those characters. The reason you came back every week wasn't to see what the car did, even though it was really cool. Just to hang out with the characters for an hour because you just wanted to be with them. You wanted to hang out with them. You want to be in a gang. And they remade it decades later, and it was like, I don't want to hang out with these people. I'd avoid them in the bar.
Well, part of that's, part of it's the writing, but it's also the actor and the director, how they perform it, And if you got, and if they can breathe life into it and add some more into it, that can be it too.
And it's that feeling of it's a world you just want to go and hang out in, and that kind of thing. I want to be with these people. I want to hang out with them, and that's what really makes a show. Because really, then you can use any story, you can use anything that goes in. Nobody cares much as long as they get to hang out with them. And it's why some of the older series, even though you look back and think, wow, that's cheesy, but at the same time, you're like, yeah, but I like these people. I don't care if it's cheesy because I just got to hang out with them for an hour. So it's like you go around your mates and you think their taste in television is terrible, but you sit there and eat popcorn with them because they're cool mates to hang out with. It's that kind of feeling.
Yeah.
So
that herd instinct.
Yeah.
That's why the people most of the people go up that one staircase because they just want to be near each other.
The problem, of course, with television is you've got to make a staircase everyone does want to go up, or it doesn't sell and you don't make a profit. But I think there's enough depth in that Sarek story to do that. If I sell my other one, I'll still try and push a Sarek one, I think, I'm relying on the other one, probably more commercial. So that one will probably sell.
So they're both. So are you saying like they're sort of two different versions of the same story?
No, they're two that take the premise of a political sci-fi, and apart from that, they bear no relationship to each other. Because one would be, because it was funny. I just tried a different. He goes, "Can you do one without a franchise?" And I was like, "No, not really, because I'm not a writer." And it's like, no, just try it for fun. Just take the franchise elements. I took the franchise elements out and it didn't work because it's not his story. It's someone else's story.
Right.
And you're trying to tell Sarek's story and it doesn't work because it's not him. It doesn't mean anything. So it's like, that's never going to work. So
Right.
I ditched that concept. That went into my hard drive. Sarek went into my hard drive. I sat down and went, right, I want to write a political drama. I'm going to write a political drama. And so I started writing a political drama. The sci-fi framed it, but because it had to be sci-fi, so I was going to write a sci-fi. The sci-fi frames it, but I'm not writing a sci-fi. I'm writing a political drama. That's set.
I assume you read Dune, right?
Oh yeah, and watched it, both versions. So yeah.
Speaking of political dramas,
I'm not going to be able to do something that good. I'm never going to be able to do anything that good. I'm not very. I'm okay, but I'm definitely not up in those echelons. Nowhere near.
Well,
I shouldn't say that.
You never know.
What? It's the next June. There you go. Buy it. It's the next June. But better. No, it's not. It's like.
Yep.
There are some stratospheric levels. I'm not even going to pretend.
Well, I think the key is, I mean, if it's based in reality, and it's based on your own experience, then you just tap into your own subconscious, and then the stories sort of spin themselves out, right?
I think that's why I enjoyed writing it more. And I think it's why I prefer it, because as I said, it is actually tapping into a message I've got and it's something I want to say. And whereas when you're writing a franchise, you're telling someone else's story. Whereas this is my own. It's my own premise. So it was more fun to write in that respect. And also I think it probably is a bit richer and has more depth for it.
Right.
Also, it's got a corking premise. It is brilliant, but I can't tell you that because that would be instantly nicked on the internet. It's fantastic.
Yeah, you got to go patent it first. Too bad you can't patent a premise.
No, once you've written it, it's basically copyrighted. Once it's on paper and you can prove when you wrote it, it's copyrighted.
But if it's a premise, if it's any kind of formula, I mean, you can't really copyright that because it's just there's only like a handful of them. Then every story follows, right? And
this one is very unique and it's absolutely fantastic. But I can't. Yeah, the premise is really good. And actually, it was amazing how it happened because I was, like I said, I thought, okay, I'll have to write one from scratch. And my agent like, great, write one from scratch. And I'm like, I don't know how to write one from scratch. I went away.
Just started doing it.
Well, no, I went away. It was serendipity. I went away to stay at home for the weekend, stay with my parents, and they were both watching telly. They only had one TV downstairs. It's just them now. And I'd forgotten my charger for my phone, and I didn't have my laptop. So I was like, I'm bored. So I went upstairs to my old room to get a book. And of course, my room isn't my room. It's a storage room full of boxes. And I'm like, I need a jumper. It's cold because my dad never turns the heating on. He's like, just wear 9 layers of jumpers, you'll be fine. So I thought, I'm going to try and find my jumper. So I was climbing up the boxes trying to find a jumper. And all the time, my brain that whole weekend was like, I can't think what to do with this. So I don't want to base it on. I opened up the jumper. There's one fiction book sitting in this box of jumpers. And I'm like, not what the fiction book was about, but where it was set. And I was like, oh my God, that's it. It's like, that is perfect. That is absolutely smashing and perfect. So I got it out and I read it in one evening. It's not based on the book, but it's based on where the book is set, which make perfect sense when you actually see the premise if it ever gets made. But it was kind of serendipity. It was like the universe going like, oh, you need a premise, here, have one. I was like, oh my God. Okay. So yeah, it was perfect timing. And then it just flowed from there. And I tested the ideas with some people and they loved it too. So I tested with people who wouldn't normally go for it. And I tested like younger age groups, middle age groups, older age groups. And they all went, oh, I like that. So it was kind of a really nice discovery process. In fact, the thing about writing it itself, like 50% of the journey has been the writing. Mm-hmm. Nightmarish thing, I never get any sleep anymore because I finish work quite late, about 8 o'clock, and then I'm like, eat some food quickly, and then like 9 o'clock till 2 a.m.
Isn't it like midnight right now for you?
Yeah, past. So
now you're just you're getting your second win. Now your creative juices are starting to flow.
Exactly, and that's the time of night I write.
Yeah,
the writing was fun, and I really enjoy it, but. Another part I really enjoy is exactly that. It's like, what premise resonates with people? When I run it past them, does it resonate with them? When I run the script past them, does it hit the beat? When I test it with people in the industry, is that a space in the market? Yes, that's a space in the market. Oh, I like that idea. Oh, I want to buy into that. And it's made it much easier to pitch to people because
Right.
it's kind of like that process, that market research, that there's almost the producing side of it. What's the gap? And the same thing when I thought about writing the franchise one, you're looking at it going like, dude, you have a story right there. Your
Yeah.
audience want it. Your fans are crying out for that. And
Hmm.
it's and I can write it because that's my world. I know about international diplomacy. I know how this works. I can tell you how this works, and I can make this a story for you. And it's that latching onto the market. So yeah, I producing is almost as much fun as writing. I would,
Yeah.
second career in my second lifespan, I'd love to be a producer. So Katzenberg and Bruckheimer to me are gods because I'm like, I love you guys the way you do things. But that's almost as much fun. And I think a lot of people who try writing and get into writing and think, why isn't this momentum working? And I'm like, because you need to do the marketing side of it. I have a military fiction I'd love to write. I really
Okay.
would love to write. It's about a cavalry major, 19th century. But it's not going to sell. Nobody wants it. And I can't just create a market by putting it on the market. Nobody's going to buy it. I could self-publish and a small cadre would buy it, but what I need to do is find a twist that makes it relevant, that makes it interesting, that resonates with viewers, and that's what I'm looking for at the moment. But that's kind of fun too.
You could always just make it a time travel one.
Could do that.
Yeah.
But it's the twist you add to it to make it what viewers want. Because a lot of people are like, well, would you adjust your art for that? I said it's a product for the marketplace. If you get a really nice product and you send it out there and nobody buys it, what you have to do is manufacture a product people want. And it can be what you want, true to you, as long as you can tell people that story in a way that means something to them. It's like, okay, I can't get... They're like parables, basically. It's like, I can tell you this story, but it's not going to mean anything to you unless I give it a context you understand. Yeah. And it's writing a story in a context they understand. You speak to them in a language they understand. And that, in a way, is enormous.
It's like Mozart. Exactly. Write super excellent music that some people will get, but then it also lower down the rungs, people that aren't quite as sensitive can still enjoy it because it's enjoyable on all kinds of different levels.
And you can speak to people in a way that they don't even know the message is coming across.
Exactly.
You almost want it to sink in.
So there we go. So there's now notice we're way past 90 minutes. And remember you were crying to me saying, I don't think I have enough to talk about. I mean, we should only go, and like, here we go. We're way past and we're just starting to get rolling.
I love politics. So I can talk about that for hours. Yeah.
So, but here's the thing. So for example, as a filmmaker, most anybody going to a theater can go and watch a film and instantly go, oh, this is a really high quality movie. And then they'll see another movie and they're like, this is really cheesy. Okay. So they immediately have that emotional response. But unless they're a filmmaker, they won't be able to list out why.
Yeah.
And the thing is, what makes a really high quality movie is there's so much stuff that lines up that all relates organically. Everything's happening. Everything is very artistically done, and it's all coming together to create this illusion of a great movie, right?
Yeah.
But that's an emotional response. So, and if you don't have the intellect to know why, it doesn't matter as long as you get the emotional response of it, right?
It's that layering together of all the different elements. It's getting the story right. And story is one of those things people tell you a lot to learn the structure of, but it is one of those things, once you know the rules of the structure, then you can bend and break them. But it's telling the story in a compelling way, and then it is combining it as an art form. That's what I love most about film and television rather than any other art form, because you're combining music, you're combining cinematography, you're combining graphics, you're combining story writing into this beautiful, coherent whole. And when it works so beautifully. And you get it you get the best ones are ones that directors and musicians that don't dominate. So Hans Zimmer is one of my favorites because the way he creates his music, he does write it himself. Well, he kind of produces it himself. But he works with artists to get from them what they're good at, their contribution, their skill, their talent. So he'll say, that's the feel of it. This is the theme I'm using. They play the theme, this is the feel, and then they go, oh yeah, I can get that theme. So they'll add something to it and grow something from it. So talking to the cellist, she'll go, yeah, I can do this with it. and talking to his friend who does all sorts of crazy, quirky instruments. Oh, I know a really good Greek instrument for that. And also, he's like a child. He just plays with different music. So he loves music technology. He loves new ideas. He loves trying things out. He loves experimenting. The joy of kind of mixing it all and blending it and working to get the best out of people. And the same with directors who aren't dictatorial.
I was going to say that directors, really good directors, are the same way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You bring out the best of the actor. You think, oh, that actor's got that resonance, so let's bring that out and push back what's not working. Bring that out.
Right.
And it's the same
sometimes
thing.
it happens right there when you're shooting the scene.
Exactly.
And if you're sensitive enough to see what's happening, and then you have enough leeway, you can just suddenly go, oh, wait a sec, we could do it like this. And nobody would have thought of it, but then suddenly it's like, whoa,
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing when we're doing the readings. So I got some of my friends on Twitter to do some readings, and a lot of the feedback can be crushing if you're a writer. It's like, I thought that was perfect and I really liked it. But the bits that hurt the most are because you know that that's an issue yourself, and you're like, spotted it. But when you actually read back and you rewrite it and you restructure it based on, oh, that's not working for them, that's not working. Oh, now how about this? Is this working? The feedback, the interaction with the viewer, who's the reader in this case, just makes it 50 times better.
Because now you're interacting. For one thing, you get out of your own shell, right?
Yeah,
now you're relating with fellow human beings.
It's beautiful.
And then I think that's also why, like you said, now this is like for the first time you can read some of your own stuff and not hate it.
Yeah.
Because also there's this creative process that happens where when you get really inspired, your subconscious just starts throwing this stuff up, and it's almost like you're just watching it come up, trying to grab it and get it on the paper as fast as you can.
Don't. Right. It's the nearest thing I can describe to it is like being possessed when it's good. I almost don't want to go through that process that I first went through, because I couldn't think about anything else. I couldn't concentrate at work. I couldn't, like Christmas Eve. I was writing on Christmas Eve. I was sitting enjoying the time with the family at Christmas dinner, and I'm like, I want to go upstairs and write it.
Yeah.
It was a little bit frightening because it's all there. The feel of it, the atmosphere of it, just clings to you, and you're off doing something else. It's almost a combination of like grief and love at the same time. Kind of, you can't shake it, and it hits you when you're out in the supermarket.
Right. Well, because I mean, anybody who can remember their dreams knows that our brain, or whatever you want to call it, is able to produce universes and live within it all by itself, right?
Oh, yeah.
Convincing universes. So I would say writing is basically you're just tapping into that same ability.
It's channeling. It's channeling. It's amazing. And then they frighten the blazes out of you. There's one scene I wrote in the one I've got, my version of it. It's the guy, quite villainous guy, has done something but you don't know what it is. Says something really nasty to my lead character, and it just suddenly comes out with it, and it was so vile that I didn't know what to say to it. I just typed out like, wait, what? And like my character's standing there waiting for the reaction. I'm like, I don't know what to say to that. I had to go like 3 days later, and in the end the character has to walk out the room because I literally don't know how to respond to it.
Right, it's just dumbfounded, like.
Yeah, and it's like my own character that I created said something I didn't plan. Well, in a way that I don't know how to respond to.
I think that's the key, is that once you get to that point where it's just coming out, the key is it's more like you're surfing on these waves, and you're just going with it as skillful as you can, like a very good surfer. There's a lot of skill involved, but at the same time, you're following the wave. You're not forcing the wave to do something that doesn't want to do. Right.
And that's when you know it's good or bad, because the bad bits in the script are the bits where you force yourself to write it, say a joining scene or a link, and it doesn't flow because it's not natural. Right. And I had that with the structure of the first one. I had because I've done screenwriting classes and did some short courses at NFTS and things like that. And it was very structured in me, or 3 acts, and it's structured like this, and this has got to happen by 15 minutes, this by half an hour, this by 45 minutes. And so the first version I wrote, and I ran past the reading of my one, was they went past it and they were thinking, it's okay. That's a shame we moved on. I would have liked to know more about him. And then later on they're like, I really like the interaction between him and this other character. It was really good, but we didn't get into depth on that. And I'd actually cut those back because I thought, oh no, that's got to be over by 15 minutes. That's got to be over by half an hour, and then we've got to have a moment in half an hour that's a tipping point kind of thing. And I was like, sod it. So I threw that out and went back to the original one.
Yeah. Good.
Where it takes half an hour for that to happen. happen? And it builds up in that half an hour. And I thought, that's not the classical screenplay structure. This shouldn't work. But no, that when I sent it back again and we did another reading, they were like, oh, that's really interesting. I love this bit. Oh, that's quite deep. And I was like, okay, so the traditional structure, that went out the window, and that takes half an hour to do, and people love it. I don't know why, but you've got to, and that's the thing. It felt unnatural when I was splitting it and cutting it back, because that scene unfolded so naturally to its own climax that when I tried to mess around with it and structure it properly.
Yeah, I think when you're given a structure, of course, when you're in school, I mean, it's being dictated to you by the teachers, and you sort of take it all hook, line, and sinker because it's a brand new idea. But a structure is just that it's something that you play with, right? Like in music, like I'm a composer in music too, and like there's the sonata allegro form, which is. Nowadays it's old-fashioned to use it, but I mean, back in the day, everybody was using it, but it was just something that you did. It was just like the beams that you use in the house. Your house has to have beams, and it's got to have a roof. So, and that's just what you use, and then you play with it, and it helps you. Also helps take a bunch of chaotic ideas and form them into something coherent, right? But then to go and have something good. To try to superimpose a structure over it after the fact in an educational setting, I'm not surprised that it actually made it worse.
Yeah, and it's the thing is to let it blow to its conclusion, write that out first, and then worry about it. And it's tell the story that it's telling me to write it. I mean, kind of people were asking me like throughout this process, like sort of why you're following it through. And I even had this discussion when I've sat down with a producer and things like that. I've said I can't explain why I want to do it because I really enjoy my day job. I'm not setting out to be a screenwriter. I actually really love my job. And I was like, it wants to be made. It wants to be made, and I will do whatever is necessary until it leaves me alone.
There you go.
And
well, that's like what writers say, right?
Yeah. And it's like, sort of, will it ever get that far? And I think it's going to get there because if it doesn't get there, it is never going to leave me alone. And that's its story. I'm doing what it tells me to do, which sounds a bit weird, but
yeah. Well, you're a writer, obviously. So it's the same with music. Like music, when you become deeply involved in being a musician or whatever and composing and stuff just starts appearing, and then you're like, well, it's like you have something that now you're the caretaker of it, and you need to put the time in and develop skills to be able to properly let this thing be born.
Exactly. And it's just sometimes I do wonder if I regret starting out on the journey though, because it just made my life a bit crazy. I mean, it's been fun, like so I've got agents, I've been at really cool events, I've met Gary Oldman. It's got a whole load of stuff going on that I never would have dreamed about 2 years ago. And also just making new friends, like the friends on Twitter following and enjoying the journey too, and meeting them. And it's got right here. Hello.
It's fun.
It's wonderful. It's meeting new personalities and whole journey. So it's been good in the overall. I'm one of those people who doesn't get there. I will probably be disappointed.
Yeah, you're having fun. That's the most important thing. I mean, it's energizing you, right? It gives you a reason to want to do stuff.
Yeah, terrifying but energizing. Absolutely terrifying but energizing.
Well, you got to take risks. If you want to get somewhere and grow, you have to take some risk.
And frustrating. Right? I mean, at the moment, for example, there's a little avenue. It's off for opinions from someone, and I don't know how that's going to turn out and things like that. But it's kind of frustrating as well, because I'm like, especially when you see them come up with new show ideas and you think that's terrible, come talk to me. But I can't talk to you because you're in Hollywood and you don't even know I exist, and you wouldn't care anyway. But it's like,
there's ways in.
Yeah, I know, but
there's ways. Well, for one thing, Twitter I found is very useful for me making contacts.
Oh, definitely.
You can tweet at people. Some people will let you DM them. Like anybody can DM me.
It's harder when they're actually in the position of making decisions, though, because I do have a couple of producers following me, and I can't ask them because we talk about other stuff, and it's kind of we never talk about the script. And
you can ask them. I mean, the worst thing they're going to say is no.
I know, but then I feel like, because we don't, there's a couple of them, and it's like I talk to you about other stuff. I don't talk to you about this, and I want to
Yeah.
ask you, but I'm not going to because the respect for the relationship of like we discuss other stuff. It's a
Okay.
respect thing. So I
So
can't.
they'll
just
feel
ask them. So I'm
offended. They'll
trying
feel
other
like
channels first.
so they'll feel like you're manipulating them. Is that what you're afraid of?
I don't. Yeah, I don't want to. I don't want to feel because I appreciate them as people, and I enjoy the discussion with them, and I don't want to take advantage of that relationship. And it's even though hardly know them
Well,
anyway.
it's
what we're gonna
interesting
do.
because I think I already said this in this show, but one of my actor friends, oh no, I didn't. A friend of mine who's quite a successful TV actor, he guest stars in a lot of shows, called me up yesterday and um, sort of sheepishly asked me if I wanted to invest in a short film he was about to do. And I was like, of course I will. And I didn't say this, but I was thinking in my mind, why are you even afraid to ask me? Of course I'm going to do it, And then all I said was, well, can I be an executive producer if I give X amount of money? And he's like, sure, of course, Matt.
There you go.
So now we're like figuring it out. And
Yeah.
it was a short film, so it's not really that expensive.
But it is one of those things. My mum's the same. So she worked away, impoverished background. She grew up in the poor district of Liverpool and didn't even finish school, that kind of thing. And she worked her way up. And she's the same thing. It's like, if you know them, go and ask them. Go and talk to them. Just go and ask. And I'm like, I can't just go and ask. Well, just go and ask them why they're not doing it. I'm like, I can't just do that. She goes, well, pick up the phone and ring them. I'm like, Mom, stop it.
Well, also, I mean, well, you're already getting good at it. You're learning, you got to go pitch your stuff.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, if 9 people say no, but the 10th person says yes, then that's all you need. And so it takes a little bit of courage, right?
I know.
And also, it also just takes practice.
And I'm
Like you get used to doing your pitch, and then it's not as hard after a while because you've sort of built a muscle,
Well, also, surprisingly, when I've got success with it and people have asked to read it, I haven't told them much about it. So I've been like, I get carried away in the evening, and because I'm interested in creative industries and around the world and talk to them about the industry, what's happening there, and we get distracted and we talk about that for like an hour or so. And this has happened in each of the events I've gone to, and they'll want to know, oh, you're interested in geopolitics, let's talk about geopolitics, and what's happening in Ukraine, how does that work? And then I talk about the Russian army and things like that, and they're like, oh, let's talk about that. And then 2 hours into the conversation, at the very end of it, I'll be like, yeah, I feel a bit of a fraud at this event because, I've written a thing. And they go, oh, send it me. And I'm like, I haven't even told you what it's about. It's like, send it. And I'm like, oh,
because they're already impressed. They already realize, oh, this girl's smart. I'm sure that I'm already interested and I know nothing about it.
Exactly. And
well, same thing.
Time,
you just told me, you told me little snippets about it, right? But I can just see how much enthusiasm you have.
Yeah.
I can tell how smart you are. I'm already interested in I'm already thinking in my mind, how can I do like a little show with green screens and stuff and pull this off on no budget and a couple of actors that I know.
If it doesn't get anywhere, we'll do that. I will find funding. I will channel.
Well, also, I mean, you could use that as a way to pitch it. You could make a little super low budget 3-minute video that shows your whole thing and use that as your pitch.
I don't have time. I've got a day job. I've got the script. I've got other things I do outside work. I've got 2 other commitments. And
I happen to know several good actors. And I've also discovered I'm a pretty decent director.
It's the money that's the issue.
Well, it's not even that much money. You wouldn't believe it. I mean, actors. I know TV actors, guys that get parts in movies, that get parts in shows, and I say, well, in my show, we do it using Zoom. We'll do like a 2 or 3 hour green screen session, and I give everybody a stipend of $100.
I've got a very good. Actually, I do have a very, very good. A very good digital SLR that does video.
Oh, nice.
Really good video. And you can plug it into a video memory so you can use it indefinitely. It's a really good one.
Oh, okay. So you got that already.
And I did a couple of film classes at Met Film School in Ealing. And it's DLSLR you can do huge amounts with, and it's good quality finish. So you can on the phone. So
These
if
days
it doesn't get anywhere, we'll do that.
I mean, you can literally film stuff on a cell phone, and if you do it right, it'll look damn good.
Yeah, I'm not a cinema. You do need a really good cinematographer though. Whether you're amateur or not, you need somebody who's
who's got the look, knows how to create
and also
the look.
lighting. You need to get spot on, or else the whole thing does look amateurish. But that's the. Well, if it doesn't get anywhere, we'll try that angle.
Well, well, you can DM me, of course, and we can tweet at each other and just throw any ideas.
I'll
Like,
write
hey
another one for
Matt,
it.
or do you know
If,
anybody?
while
And
this one's in progress, we could write another one. That's
yeah,
quite okay.
'cause
Yeah.
there's so many. And also the thing is that almost every actor I've met is actually also a screenwriter and a producer, because they realize, if you're an actor, it's way better if you write your own stuff, because now you can put yourself in the roles you want to do rather than just
Yeah.
taking whatever scraps happen to fall off the table and that pay that week.
I would not want to be an actor. I don't know how to do it. I don't know how you guys do it.
Yeah.
I was listening to Tim Russ, and you could tell he was enthused about the directing and stuff, and the acting. I'm like, how do you do that for a living? It's amazing, but I don't know how you can do it. It's like it's one profession I've never wanted to do, because just like I don't know how they do it.
Well, everybody has their own thing, and it takes, a little bit of training, and then acting is really a pretty natural thing, actually.
I lived 10 minutes from Stratford-upon-Avon once.
You already told me a bunch of times you're not an actor. You want to be an actor. I guarantee if I had you in my show, I could light you up. All I'd have to do, like, get you to be this, write this, like, hey, you've been on this show right now, and you would be amazed how good your performance would be.
I don't do acting. I have no desire at all to act. None.
Okay. Not even if your character was like a writer, like we could do a meta, layers upon layers, so your character actually is writing.
No.
The show that we're watching.
No shows about making shows. No, that's not that old Hollywood cliche. It's a show about making a show. Lots of people.
But everything's a cliche. It's how well you do it.
No, I don't act.
Okay.
End of.
Right.
End of story. I don't act. Don't know why. It's just never appealed. Never wanted to be a doctor.
Well, you certainly have a lot of stage presence.
No, that's because I'm not reading a script. And I don't have an audience. I got you. I can't see anyone else. And you're on a screen.
I'll tell you what. Well, in my show, we won't have a script. We'll just freestyle the whole thing.
Well, then what's the point of being a writer if we don't have a script? The whole point is my script.
Well, right. You just write freestyle for 3 minutes. As make sure that you get from here to here.
You've got to get the writing right. Right. You've got to sit down and really work the writing out and get it right. And it's amazing the difference. I was watching the original House of Cards, which was Andrew Davis. So that was Andrew Davis who wrote that one. That's with Ian Richardson and the others. And it's stratospherically good writing. Really, really good writing. And I don't want to sound my age like I'm aging, but you just watch something recent in comparison, you're like, it's light years.
Yeah.
Andrew Davis's stuff is light years ahead of this. It's more intelligent, it's more structured, it's more engaging, it's more gripping, and it's got some moments that shock you. And I was watching one of my favorite single TV episodes of all time is Murder by the Book, which is I think it was the first major Columbo episode, I think. Directed by an up-and-coming director by the name of Spielberg. But it's still one of the most extraordinary pieces of television. I recommend it to anyone who watches it. It's like, just sit down and watch that, because it's compelling, it's structured, it's got some nuance to it, it's directed beautifully by Spielberg. And it's just a beautiful piece of writing. And it makes me feel horribly inadequate. Same with Andrew Davis.
No. Okay, don't let yourself say that.
But it's
because
like,
you are super talented, right? So don't go there and say I'm not good enough.
I don't know.
Because you're already proving that you are, right?
I don't know. We'll prove it when it's actually made and I got the Emmy in my hands.
No, you already know how good it is. So the Emmy is just like the icing on the cake, right?
Yeah, I'm not going to get it because I can't write episode 2. I've been trying to write episode 2 for ages. It's currently 90 pages long, episode 2, and I can't cut it down.
But those are damn good 2 pages.
Oh, they're really good. Episode 2 needs to be 90 minutes because I really like it. So, but yeah, no, episode 2 is really good. It's got an unexpected twist in it. Really
so all you need is a little encouragement. You just need your agent to heap some praise on you and pump you up and make you feel good, and then off you go, right?
It's so frustrating. It's like, if I can just stand in front of a production company and just tell them, they would go for it. I know they would. It's like if I can just stand it, but I can't stand in front of them.
Get to that, yeah. Well, you know the story about Gene Roddenberry, right?
No.
He was a cop, right? Well, he was in the Air Force, I believe. It was like a bomber pilot, and then after the Air Force, he became a cop. And then he also decided he wanted to become a writer. He started writing stuff. And then, but he couldn't figure out, it was the same deal. He was trying to pitch it to people and nobody would listen. So then he figured out where some particular Hollywood producer liked to go, some bar that they hung out at. And so one time he dressed himself up in all his cop gear and he came up and he pretended like he was going to arrest the guy. And then he flopped the script down in front of him and walked away. And then the next day, the guy called him up and said, wow, this script is great. So it's pure theatrics, you know?
I know, but they don't hang out in bars around me.
Well, you just got to figure out where they do hang out, right?
I do go to industry events, and I have managed moderate success in talking to them, but I haven't nailed really being able to talk to Jason. There's a trick to it. Finding out what that trick is and getting there is
part of it is just getting out there. Like, for example, the only reason why I interviewed Tim Russ, right?
That's brilliant.
It's because I was at the Star Trek convention in Las Vegas, hanging out at a bar at midnight, and just pure chance he happened to be standing next to me.
And you asked,
and then I asked. I was courageous enough to engage him in a conversation about astronomy because I knew he was an astronomer. And then we just started talking. And then at the crucial point, I said, "Oh, by the way, I'm a YouTuber. Like, do you ever do interviews?" You know, and that at that moment, we'd already established a relationship of some sort. And he's like, "Sure, just go to my webpage and email me."
Yeah.
You know, and then I followed up and we exchanged many, many emails because we were trying to use this other service to hire him through, and it never worked. So I finally said, "Dude, can I just pay you through PayPal or something?" He's like, "Okay." And
it's an interesting conversation. Lovely to talk to you anyway. Never mind interviews and things. It's just nice to talk to people and my Twitter friends across the world. This is lovely, actually.
It is.
I'd love meeting you all.
We'll have to meet up if you ever go to any Star Trek conventions or something like that are do you think you would ever end up going to one in the States?
Oh, you know, I could end up being invited to one if they like the Sarek idea. No, I won't.
Okay. Well, I'm for sure going to Star Trek Las Vegas.
I've never been to America, so I'd
really
like
fun.
to visit. I'm not sure I could go to Las Vegas.
Actually, believe it or not, okay. That's exactly what I thought. I thought I was going to hate it. I thought it was going to be all glitzy and I would just hate it. But I loved it. I fell in love with it like within a few hours because there's all the glitz, but then there's this really wild, weird spiritual energy that's just flying around and everybody's really friendly and there's all these different undercurrents of stuff going on. So I was like, whoa, this place is rocking.
Conventions are fun. I like them. So I've gone to a few with my mum when she's been a speaker and I really enjoy them. And it's nice as well because I get to see the other side. I get to go around the back and meet people, which is nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, conventions do have a lovely atmosphere. People who really love what they love.
It's really fun.
Love what they do. Some very strange people as well, which is also fun because they kind of make it more interesting.
It's a blast. Yeah.
I might look at a Canada one because I got relatives in Canada. So.
What part of Canada?
Around Montreal and things like that. So Montreal,
my cello teacher
and also
lives
I'd
in
love
Toronto.
to see Toronto. I'd love to go back to. I've been there a couple of times. I really love it out there.
Oh, cool.
It's the only other country I'd consider living in at the moment. I'd love to. I consider.
Okay, well, anything's possible.
Sorry, America, but Canada's Canadian.
Well, we're crazy. So much crazy shit going on in America right now.
Anyway, yeah, but okay, that's been really fun. Thank you so much for asking.
It has been. So we got to end with the customary Vulcan salute.
Get that in my hands. They're trying to force
I'm
my
going to
hand
say, but I'm going to put a different spin on it. I'm going to say, live long and prosper and with great love.
Live long, prosper, and with great love. And kudos to Sarek. So
yeah, kudos to Sarek.
Pranakasha production. Fantastic creations emerging spontaneously from the space of life.
For the benefit of all beings everywhere.
We gotta change.